France, late 18th century, a kingdom on the edge of a precipice, where the shadows of the many grew longer against the firelight of rebellion. At the center of this storm stood Marie Antoinette. To her people, she was not just a queen, but the symbol of everything they lacked. While Paris starved, the Palace of Versailles remained a fortress of absolute luxury, a world removed from the reality of the dying streets. Inside these golden halls, time was measured in gowns, jewels, and the endless pursuit of pleasure, paid for by a nation in debt. The queen was known for her love of gambling. Night after night, fortunes were lost on the turn of a card, while the treasury bled dry. Exotic fruits and fine delicacies were served on silver platters, a stark contrast to the hollow stomachs of the citizens just miles away. In the mud-caked streets of Paris, the divide was not just social. It was a matter of life and death. Hunger was the only constant. A single moldy crust of bread was often all that a family could hope for, shared between children whose faces were marked by soot and exhaustion. The people began to talk. In the dark corners of taverns and alleyways, the name Marie Antoinette became a curse, synonymous with their suffering. Angry pamphlets, known as labels, spread through the city like wildfire, turning the queen's private life into public scandals and political weapons. The quiet suffering of the masses was evolving into a low, terrifying rumble. The air itself felt thick with the scent of an impending revolution. The gates of Versailles, once a barrier between the divine right of kings and the common man, were about to be rattled by the hands of the desperate. As the sun set on the old world, Marie Antoinette finally heard the sound she had ignored for too long. The chanting of a nation. Welcome back to our exploration of the French Revolution. Today, we look at the woman at the center of the storm. Marie Antoinette. Versailles was a world of its own, a golden cage that isolated the monarchy from the harsh realities of the French people. Marie Antoinette moved through these halls with a regal air, her presence defined by an almost impossible level of luxury. She was surrounded by a sea of courtiers, all competing for her attention in a display of endless etiquette and fashion. The price of her pleasure was astronomical. Every day, the finest silk fabrics and delicate feathers arrived at her private chambers. Glistening diamonds, worth more than entire villages, were presented for her approval, further cementing her image as a symbol of excess. When the sun went down, the palace transformed into a high-stakes gambling hall. Fortunes were won and lost in a single night. The queen watched the cards with intense focus, seemingly indifferent to the massive debts she was accumulating on the nation's behalf. Parties at Versailles were legendary. Towers of colorful macarons, tiered cakes, and exotic fruits were served under crystal chandeliers. But just miles away, the scene was devastatingly different. The streets of Paris were cold, dark, and filled with despair. Starving citizens huddled together for warmth, their faces gaunt and smeared with soot, their eyes hollow from persistent hunger. The contrast was a bitter pill for the public to swallow. A single piece of moldy bread was now a luxury for many. In the taverns, the people found a voice. They shared libelle scandalous pamphlets that mocked the queen's lifestyle. These pamphlets painted her as Madame Deficit, the woman who was single-handedly bankrupting the nation of France. Whispers of rebellion began to turn into open talk of revolution. Every alleyway became a breeding ground for dissent. The palace gates, once symbols of prestige, now looked like barriers holding back a rising tide of fury. Angry eyes watched from the shadows. The people were no longer just hungry. They were ready to act. Deep inside Versailles, the queen began to sense the change. The distant roar of the Parisian crowd grew louder every day. The storm was no longer approaching, it was here. Join USA in Part 3 as the revolution finally reaches the palace steps. In the shadows of 18th century Paris, a revolution was being printed before it was ever fought. The air smelled of damp stone and bitter ink. Secret cellars became the birthplaces of libels, scandalous pamphlets designed to dismantle the prestige of the monarchy, one lie at a time. Through shadowy alleyways, these papers spread like a virus. They didn't just report news, they manufactured outrage against a woman they barely knew. At the center of this storm was Marie Antoinette. To the printers, she wasn't a queen. She was the ultimate target for the public's rising misery. While she walked the halls of Versailles, she was unaware that her reputation was being shredded by 1,000 printing presses across the city. The contrast was stark. Within the palace, there was gold and silence. Outside, there was hunger and a growing, collective scream. In crowded, dimly lit taverns, the libels were read aloud to those who could not read themselves. Lies were becoming local legend. Rumors of extravagance and heartlessness were whispered over cheap wine, fueling a hatred that was rapidly reaching its boiling point. Then came the myth that would seal her fate, a phrase whispered in the streets that became the ultimate symbol of royal indifference. A towering, sugary cake, dripping with decadence. It was the physical embodiment of everything that people could no longer afford. Bread, let them eat cake. History attributes these words to Marie Antoinette. Yet there's no record she ever said them, but the truth didn't matter. To the starving masses outside the gates, the phrase was a weapon. It was proof that their queen saw their suffering as a joke. The myth took hold. It bridged the gap between frustration and violence. The propaganda had successfully turned a woman into a monster. Bread riots began to erupt. What started as whispers in the dark turned into a roar that shook the very foundations of the monarchy. From the squares of Paris, the citizens marched. They held torches high, their light reflecting the desperation in their eyes. The city was a tinderbox, and the lies about the queen were the spark. The streets were now a theater of chaos and fire. At Versailles, the music had stopped. The isolation of the palace was finally being pierced by the sounds of the approaching mob. The Golden Gates, once a symbol of divine protection, were now nothing more than iron bars holding back the tide of history. The storm had arrived. Not just a riot, but a revolution fueled by the devastating power of a lie that everyone chose to believe. By October 1789, the gilded luxury of Versailles had become a cage, surrounded by a sea of desperate and starving citizens. The air was thick with the scent of rain and rebellion as a massive mob surged against the royal gates. The flicker of torches cast long, dancing shadows on the faces of people who had nothing left to lose but their chains. Inside, the once silent hall of mirrors was suddenly filled with the echoing sounds of panic and breaking glass. The chandeliers flickered as the rhythmic roar of the mob grew deafening, shaking the very foundations of the monarchy. Deep within her private chambers, Marie Antoinette stood alone, the weight of a nation's hatred finally catching up to her. Her elaborate gown, once a symbol of divine right, now felt like a heavy shroud as she stared at the trembling doors. King Louis XVI stood by her side, but the crown he wore seemed to weigh heavier than ever before. He was a man weary of his own power, watching the world he knew crumble into the dust of revolution. Suddenly, the palace corridors became a battlefield, a clash between the dying aristocracy and the birth of a new era. Orange torchlight painted the marble walls with the colors of fire and blood as the guards were slowly pushed back. Then came the moment that would change history forever. The revolutionary soldiers breached the inner sanctum. Marie Antoinette was seized. The hands of the common people, rough and calloused, took hold of the Queen of France. She was led through the very gardens where she once played, but now they were dark, damp, and filled with mud. The royal family was ushered into a simple carriage. Their divine protection vanished like mist in the morning sun. As the carriage moved through the narrow streets of Paris, they were met not with cheers, but with a wall of fury. Years of hunger and neglect stared back at them from every doorway, a silent judgment on centuries of excess. The journey ended at the gates of a dark, cold prison, far from the warmth and light of Versailles. The echo of their footsteps in the stone corridor marked the final transition from royalty to prisoner. As the heavy iron gates slammed shut, the era of the French monarchy was effectively over, and the trial of the century was about to begin. The year is 1793. The French Revolution reaches its fever pitch, and the once mighty Queen Marie Antoinette faces her darkest hour. In the cold, damp stone of the conciergerie, the air is thick with dread. The trial that will seal her fate begins. Standing before a gallery of angry citizens, Marie Antoinette displays a quiet defiance that contrasts with the chaos surrounding her. The judges hurl accusations of treason and excess. To them, she is the symbol of everything they wish to destroy. Exhausted and pale, she listens as the witnesses testify. The splendor of Versailles is now a distant, haunting memory. Silence falls over the neoclassical hall. The verdict is read, and the sentence is death. Her reign has reached its end. A single tear traces a path through the suit. On her cheek, she accepts her fate with a composure that surprises her captors. The final journey does not happen in a golden carriage. Instead, a humble wooden cart waits to take her through Paris, under a bruised and smoky sky. The queen is paraded through streets, lined with jeering crowds and chilling silence. The city she once ruled now watches her pass with a mixture of fury and morbid curiosity as the revolution triumphs. At the Place de la Révolution, the guillotine stands tall, its cold metal glinting against the fading light of the afternoon. She climbs the splintered wooden steps with dignity. Her tattered silk gown drags behind her, a relic of a lost world. The blade falls, and a chapter of history is severed. But the story of the last queen is far from over. Was she a villain of excess or a tragic victim of propaganda? Her life remains a tapestry of light and shadow. Her legacy is woven into the very fabric of the revolution, a haunting reminder of the fragility of power and prestige. Like, subscribe, and join us as we continue to discover the hidden truths of history's most enigmatic figures.